Dear friends, we gather this morning to remember and to celebrate the life of one who filled our world with his love, his goodness, his wit, sense of adventure, his extraordinary spirit, and outstanding example. In gratitude and humility, we turn to the wisdom of our tradition for comfort, for guidance, and for understanding. Throughout the centuries, our people have lifted their eyes to the mountains, looking for the source of their help, and understanding that all of our help comes from Adonai, from God, the maker of heaven and earth. Esainai el Harim me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esainai el Harim me'ayin Yavo Ezri Ezri me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Varetz Ezri me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Varetz Esainai el Harim me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esainai el Harim me'ayin Yavo Ezri.
Ecclesiastes teaches, for everything there is a season, a time for each experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, time to throw stones, time to gather them, time to embrace and a time to pause from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. These are the times we gather here to remember. To remember. We remember today our beloved Neil Katz. Our friends grieve in a darkened world. In their tears there is loneliness. In their silence, lamentation. Lost in sorrow, may they find the presence today and all the days going forward of loving friends. Hear them, God. Be with them. For Neil's love, which united us all in life, death cannot sever. His companionship, shared along life's path, continues now through the tenderness of memory. And for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought such intense joy to us, we give our thanks to you, O God. I invite you, if you wish, to join with me in the recitation of the 23rd Psalm. We say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou spreadest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Ata imadi, thou art with me. You should only know how meaningful it is to Neil's family that you are here with them, walking them through this most difficult, most bitter day. You're invited to join them continually over the coming days. Interment will be private, but the family will receive friends today at the Katz residence at 3581 East Scarborough Road in University Heights until 4 p.m. this afternoon and 6 to 8 p.m. this evening. Again, they will receive guests on Tuesday from 1 to 4 p.m. And they invite you, if you wish, to honor Neil's memory, to do so with a generous gift to the COPD Foundation. The website can be found in the announcement in the paper. They, of course, invite your continued gestures of condolence, loving memories of their dear one in the days and weeks to come. My friend's contemporary Rabbi Jacob Schenkman once wrote that inside of every person is a private place of memory and love, and in that place, that sanctuary, our loved ones who have gone before us abide. It is there that we sense their presence, they caress our spirits, and we enfold them in our hearts. They talk to us. They tell us tales. And so the pain of separation is soothed by memory, the hurt sustained healed by love, and we ourselves become somehow ennobled through our sorrow. It's a beautiful idea that our souls are immortal and held with care continually by those we've encountered and loved. And today I pray, dear God, in this gentle space where we have gathered, that this beautiful Jewish teaching is true for all of you. Each of you, I pray that the sorrow that now chokes up your throats comes to ennoble you in some fashion. As we look within today, we will find there in Neil Katz a devoted father, a proud grandfather, a loving husband, cherished brother, caring uncle, a precious man, a dear friend who lived for nearly 7 decades, who accompanied us in life, and who held strongly felt values, things he would stand up for and things that he wouldn't stand for, alongside a love and affirmation of life itself. When Neil breathed his last on Thursday evening, he was not in pain. But over recent weeks and months, things had been quite difficult. He wasn't seeing progress that could be sustained, and the frailties beset upon him by COPD had taken a real toll, a bruising of his spirit. I think he would have liked the idea that now, instead of worrying for him and fighting for him and advocating to and with him, that we're now literally just with him, holding his values close and letting his spirit speak to us and accompany us again. Among those mourning Neil deeply today are his dear siblings, Steve and his Jackie here with us, and from the distance to Texas, his sister Anita and her David. They are remembering a kind and engaged and protective brother who desperately did not want to be here, who wanted so badly at this point in the spring to be, in fact, basking in the glow of memories of the recent family gathering for Elizabeth's bat mitzvah. There were plans in place for Neil and his brother to go by train together and shine a spotlight on others and not be the subject of a spotlight at this service. The 3 Katz siblings, children of Ruth and Max Katz, remembered growing up together on a street called P and a Half in the city portion of Galveston, Texas. Although Neil was born here in Cleveland, the family moved south early in his lifetime. Speaking of early in his life, Texas driving age at that time was 14 years old. And Max simply taught his son to drive by throwing him the keys to the car at 14 and saying, "Here, take these and go drive around the block." Neil went to Ball High School, then Lamar Tech, and then into the steel business in Houston. Later in his own life, when Neil became a father, he pretty much did the same thing when he felt it was time for his daughters to drive. Although the law in Ohio does not allow it, Neil handed Adrian the keys on Fairmount Boulevard at the age of 13. Happy bat mitzvah. And Ellen was handed the keys at 14 to begin driving on mountainous terrain in New Mexico. We grieve today with Ellen and her fiancé Tony, with Adrian, and with son-in-law Nick from the distance to England. They're remembering the patriarch of this family with great respect and love and affection, and also with the honest sense that their dad was robbed of the time that he so nearly wanted to be around to make more and more precious memories with Skylar, with Isla, and with Nell. These kids knew their grandparents on their mom's side as a team, Grampy and Mimi, neither of them dispensable. Just days ago, Grampy had sent each of his daughters a text just to say how proud he was of each of them and the families they were raising. In just a few words, he reminded them how much they will miss his direct attention. Grampy was a quiet but impactful presence to his daughters and granddaughters, a constant source of special presence and thoughtfulness. And Mimi is not quiet. How do you describe Bibi? I think the best word is awesome. Bibi, Adrian, and Ellen have been for a long time now deciphering and interpreting and figuring out what Neil might have quietly communicated in a family discussion, if in fact he could get a word in amongst all the women in the family. Even when given the spotlight and attention, Neil was, shall we say, not verbose. He kept things simple, but reflected with purpose and intention the constancy of his interest in his girls. Ellen told me that her dad would find just the sweetest spot to show her how much he wanted to know about her and her hopes and her ambitions, and even the day-to-day dramas through her life in school and work and relationships. "Tell me more about that," he'd say. And that he'd just pay attention and listen and find ways to affirm and encourage. "That's great," he'd chime in whenever he could. She says that when growing up, the girls were allowed to pick any pumpkin they wanted for the family household as long as they could carry it themselves back to the car. A method that's continually being used in the family today. Adrian will speak in a few moments on. She is an accomplished writer herself. I'll let her tell her stories, but I don't think she'll mind if I iterate first what so many of us have been describing about Neil for weeks now as we saw him weaken. Key phrases of his special way. Over and again, you'll hear her and all of us say today that he was always there, listening and present, gentle, a constant. All of us. It's true. Neil was that authentic, the same man to everyone. I'm thinking here of a note sent to me over the weekend by Neil's dear friend and my colleague, Reverend Roger Osgood, who wrote, "Let me just say that we've been friends of Bibi and Neil's for over 30 years. We've vacationed together and enjoyed lots of good times and some not so good." He continued to say what Neil might have liked to hear, that Neil was a good friend who loved his family, was proud of his daughters, and adored his granddaughters. He was Roger's term, not mine, a so-so golfer. But he had a great sense of humor, and I will miss his bad jokes and partnering with him as we beat our wives in a game of cards. But mostly I'll miss his presence and friendship. These words of tribute and others I've heard as Neil was in and out of the hospital over the last several weeks makes me wonder how Neil's cousin Sharon, in whose driveway Neil had parked a blue Pinto with Texas plates, might have described him to the girl she knew working together at Camp Wise in the JCC, namely a young drama and dance maven named Bibi Weinberg. The year was 1973, when Sharon helped fix up her cousin Neil, who had just moved here for a job with another family cousin at Continental Steel, for a blind date who became a girlfriend, who became a wife, who became partner to him in nearly every endeavor for almost 45 years. Bibi says that their first date was to the movies at Richmond Mall. They saw Bang the Drum Slowly with Robert De Niro. It didn't matter what was on the screen. All she saw was him, and she just knew. Like 5 generations of Weinberg women before her, she had an intuition to find a life's partner in an instant. In her words, that night Neil took my hand, and I was done. An independent and creative force of nature herself, it's not as if Bibi needed a whole lot from a partner. But he loved being the man to give her exactly what she needed. Their relationship involved them being able to kibitz and poke fun at each other. The teamwork of busy parenting of daughters, raising them, supporting their various interests, taking them bowling or out to the movies or just taking a walk. Giving each of his daughters a grounding in Jewish tradition at Fairmount Temple, and important holiday traditions for each side of the family. Most notably, Neil and Bibi knew one another's heart very well. They could calm the other's nerves just by being present or helping the other to visualize a place better than the spot they were in. Bibi told me that Neil was calmed in recent weeks by picturing a garden where he had planted rose bushes. He could bear his anxieties and concerns to her freely, and the feeling is mutual. He was worried for her, and he hated not being at full strength himself. Although there were times, even in recent weeks, when Bibi or Ellen or Adrian saw glimpses of a restored to form, down-to-earth Neil, a devoted husband and dad always. Bibi remembered aloud to me this past weekend about a time when she had a cast on her leg for the replacement of an Achilles tendon. She was in a great deal of pain, and fear was paralyzing her at the top of the stairs, standing there on crutches. Neil approached her and gave her, without words, exactly what she needed. The message that he let her know she could lean on him, that he would bear her weight. At the top of the stairs, he showed her how to place her hands on his shoulders and to let him carry whatever burdened her, not to do it all for her, but to give her the trust in both him and herself that she could slowly, carefully walk again. Bibi, that's what we're here, all of us, to say to you today. It's in fact what Jewish tradition tells us to tell you constantly in the weeks ahead. The essence of our mourning is simple. We gather around you, a constant, gentle presence. Bibi, the people in your life, your community, your synagogue, all of us are here at the top of a long staircase for you. We're here to say to you, you can lean on us. If you'll give us the chance to help you trust that step by step, you'll get where you need to go. It's scary to take that next step. But don't you ever let go of that place where that special and trusting man lives within you. Last summer, our colleague at Fairmount Temple, Rabbi Caruso, pointed me to a short passage in a book, very much loved by one of our congregants. The book is interestingly called The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. It's a secular book, but there is a very powerful message in it that resonates with Jewish tradition. In the novel, near the end of the book, there's a description of a painful loss sustained by a major character. She describes the feeling of loss in a way that parallels how many of us feel. She says that when you see a loved one die with your own eyes, it is an all of a sudden time when possibility just vanishes. A life full of projects, discussions started, desires not even fulfilled, vanishes, and there's no going back. For the first time in our lives, we understand the meaning of the word never. You say the word 100 times a day, but you don't know what you're saying. But when someone you love dies, it's like fireworks suddenly burning out in the sky and everything going black. But the character in the book describes soon thereafter walking across a courtyard with a person dear to her as they begin to hear a stranger in the distance playing a piano. They stop and hear very clearly the beauty of music to which they might sway or dance. They take a deep breath and they say, "I think he would have liked this moment." The narrator then explains perhaps that is what life is about. There is a lot to despair, but there's also moments of beauty. It's as if the strains of music create an interlude, and elsewhere, that comes to us. Within the word never, there is an always, and always within a never. From now on, I'll search for those moments. To the Katz family, each of you, and the members of your extended families, I know how hard it is to use the word never to describe a loved one who was just here. We cannot deny that he has died. But instead of letting never stand on its own, let's not forget to use the word always as well, in the following manner. Neil Katz will always be a rock in his family's life. He will always be the dad and husband who brought roses on Valentine's Day. He will always be the one singing that goofy Beatles, "I said it's your birthday," without fail. Because Neil Katz lived, he will be within your never and always that heals you. And a reminder that you are each completely and utterly loved. Amen. This time Adrian's going to come share some thoughts with us.
I remember my dad something my dad said to me at my wedding 9 years ago that has stuck with me. It was at the end of the night, and Nick and I were getting ready to leave. Dad walked me arm in arm to the door, and as he turned to me right before I said goodbye, he leaned in and he said, "This was such a great day. I am so drunk." He liked cold Pilsners, Neil Young, Creedence Clearwater Revival, blue jeans, terrible jokes, baseball, guacamole, hot days, and golf. He loved buying his granddaughters frilly, flowery dresses, and my mom, my sister Elle, and I a bouquet of flowers every Valentine's Day, no matter where we were. He loved tuna salad sandwiches with relish, taking the back roads whenever possible, truck stops instead of fast food. He took us bowling, and to the movies, and knew where every single one of our friends lived by memory, playing chauffeur every weekend until we were old enough to drive. In the fall, we picked pumpkins and ate apple fritters. He took his coffee black, mug filled only halfway up so it wouldn't get cold. In winters, he ate chili and cornbread. No scenery brought him more comfort than the Gulf Coast and the sound of the waves. To know him was to know the details, because he wasn't a man of many words, but he was always there, listening and present through every ballet concert and breakup. When my car needed repairs in New Mexico and I was flat broke, waving me off at the airport when I moved to England, cheering me on with each new adventure or undertaking despite his love for routine and creature comforts. He was always there, solid in his gentle presence with each new risk, big or small. He shared the first bowl of ice cream my oldest daughter ever ate. It was great. And played hide and seek with my youngest as she padded around the house with her chubby baby feet. He and I sat side by side in the middle of the New Mexican desert at 5 a.m., watching hot air balloons take off from the ground, clutching coffees and burritos. I dragged him through Harrods during their Christmas sale, Covent Garden on New Year's Eve, and a fringy master's degree dissertation. And he knew me by every detail, too. And we understood each other without having to say a whole lot. When I left here to fly this trip, before it was even light outside, I pulled out the hippos that he had sent me years ago, after hearing I was pregnant with my first child. One pink and one blue. He had wanted to hedge his bets, he said. I tucked one into each of my girls' beds. When I spoke with the girls later that day to tell them I had arrived safely, I noticed each had instinctively tucked the hippos under their arms, carting them downstairs to the dinner table. To keep Grampy with them, they told me. And we will continue to find the ways to do so. All 3 granddaughters have inherited his chocolate brown eyes. Here's the example one. Good timing, Skylar. So when we look into their beautiful faces, we will catch a glimpse of his when they tell a terrible knock-knock joke, and both my girls are constantly on the search for them. There he is again. He did not have a larger-than-life personality. His life and my memory of it will never boil down to one grand dramatic gesture or event. Rather, it's the details, the small ritual-like nuances that are so uniquely his. That will carry his memory forward. The tiny, predictable, but also deeply personal gestures that someone who didn't know him might easily miss. But for those lucky enough to have known him, these details will mean everything. Thank you. Thank you.
Will you all please rise?
מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומי, אמצעי מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזרע קיאה מזהירים את נשמת ניסן אשר בן מנדל ורבקה שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרו החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Neil Katz, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. And may his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.